It is Gasparilla Day. It is here, and happy celebrating to all of you in Tampa. I am wishing you a safe and fun holiday. I cannot think of a better way to cap off this bonus series with someone I am honored to call a friend. Ever since we connected, we became friends right away and were very supportive of each other. From running his own Mastermind Series to his own company, Tampa Counseling and Wellness, this U.S. veteran does it all. But before we bring him on today, we are going to learn how he podcasts. Carlos, which platform do you stream your shows through?
I'm a Spotify guy, I got to say.
Spotify with the wrapped up?
That's right. Right.
There you go. When in the day do you find yourself listening to shows?
So my podcast times are usually on the way into work in the morning. It's a good way to just get myself ready for the day, or when I'm in the gym. The downtime in the gym is
So through the car, headset?
Absolutely.
There it is. Everyone listening on, I would love to hear how you podcast. Email me, info@vincentalancy.com, and I will feature you on a show. And with that, I want to welcome you back to That Entrepreneur Show. I am your host, Vincent A. Lancy. You can learn more about me at Vincent A. Lancy on all social media or my website, vincentalancy.com. If it is your first show with us, each week since December 2019, I have interviewed the founder of a company or brand to share what has worked well for them, what they needed to improve on, and all of their learning lessons along the way right here on this show. There are also bonus episodes like this Gasparilla bonus series. There is one from our first season in podcasting as well, and Rewind the Clock episodes where I bring back previous guests who continue to make headlines. You never know which motivational journey will inspire you most. And today's guest is someone who everyone in Tampa should know. If you tune into my other podcast series, A Mental Health Break, then you have heard of today's guest company on each episode for the last half year. He is the sponsor of the show and the owner and primary therapist at Tampa Counseling and Wellness. He is a licensed clinical psychologist, coach, and speaker, providing counseling and coaching to those looking to make a major life transformation. As I mentioned, he has a Mastermind Series that you will find the link to in this show description. His areas of expertise include anxiety, depression, and those who struggle with motivation and self-esteem. He also specializes in working with entrepreneurs, executives, and business leaders, one of the things the Mastermind touches on. So without waiting any longer, let's bring him on, Dr. Carlos Garcia. Carlos, I'm glad to be recording with you here at Tampa Counseling and Wellness.
Hey, Vincent. Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you, man. Glad to be on your show. Always happy to sit down and have a chat with you.
Likewise. Would you mind introducing yourself to our listeners today before we dive into business talk?
Absolutely. So my name is Dr. Carlos Garcia. I'm a clinical licensed psychologist here in the Tampa, Florida area. Have my own practice where we serve a community, folks that are struggling with any mental health, behavioral issues. And I'm also a coach, an entrepreneurial coach.
I'm looking forward for everyone in this podcast, especially to hear more about your coaching and the Mastermind Series you do specifically for entrepreneurs. We know you went to school, you practiced medicine, you got your counseling. Mm-hmm. What led you from leaving that traditional practice to your own leaving corporate to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a great question, Vince. I think for me, like many entrepreneurs, we're sort of in our field with a lot of great ideas, with a lot of ways to innovate, with a lot of ways to do the work that we do in a very sort of exciting and passionate way. Mm-hmm. And what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs is they find themselves within an organization, an agency, a company where they're stuck, right? And they're just sort of backed up against the corner. Not a lot of space to bring those ideas to the table. So for me, I started getting kind of tired of seeing how the mental health system is working out there. I should say not working a lot of the time.
Yes, not working.
Right? Yep. And so I knew that there was a better way that we can do it. I knew that there was a better way that we can provide these services. The big thing sort of for me is like, how can we provide these services, but also to incorporate into the vision of our company, like how do we have a bigger impact on the field? Not just provide these services, but how do we remove the stigma that's still so strong in the mental health field, and how do we get people to start reaching out for help when they need it without feeling any sense of shame or guilt or all of this other stuff that people might feel sometimes.
And I think it's great how someone in your position working in counseling also does the business, because that destigmatizes it as well. When you're doing these Mastermind Series, when they look you up a little more and they look into you, they see what you do professionally, they think, okay, maybe it is okay to start talking about this stuff. And I also can agree where people say, are you in mental health? Are you in entrepreneurship? Mm-hmm. You do the two podcasts. But the way I put it is, there is no entrepreneurship without mental health.
Totally.
If you don't take care of your mental health, you're not really capable of accomplishing much.
Totally.
If you agree with that.
Yeah. And so, I've been called a coach. I've been called a psychologist, a couple of different things. But at the end of the day, right, what I started to notice, Vince, is that whether I'm in a therapy office or whether I'm in a CEO's office, a lot of the things that we're working on to get them unstuck, it's all mind frame, it's all mindset. And so there's such an overlap, with that person that's coming in with a deep level of anxiety about not knowing what to do with their future, or maybe they just lost a job, or, the person that's sitting at the top of a company trying to decide how are we going to maneuver our company culture, right? It's all about starting with what's going on between the ears, that big mushy gray thing up in our heads.
That's right. Tampa's coachologist is here right now. But as you mentioned, people usually do go the corporate route. Since you left that route, what would you say two of the hardest parts of being on your own are?
Two of the hardest parts, I think one of the things is uncertainty. And I think that's for any entrepreneur, right? You can never really know what the economy is going to do. I mean, we can sort of have some predictions, right? But look what the pandemic did for us. It really just threw a lot of companies, a lot of people into disarray. So I think the uncertainty is one of the biggest factors, one of the hardest factors to deal with as an entrepreneur. And the second one is people. Right? Like doesn't matter what your company is, what service you provide, what product you sell. At the end of the day, it's about people, not only your customers, but the people within your company, right? And if that isn't working well, then your company's not going to work well.
And as Elizabeth Frederick, she was on the show not too long ago, she put it, as much as entrepreneurs think they're the boss of their company, their customers are actually the boss of their company.
I love that.
The customers dictate everything. What the customer wants, you have to do.
Absolutely.
They call the shots. You may think you do,
right.
but they do more so.
Yeah.
But entrepreneurship, there are ups and downs every day, Carlos.
Absolutely.
You can attest to that. As we just said, the uncertainty. What would you say one of the greatest lessons or failures from your career is?
Yeah, failures. I mean, that's something I talk about often. I think a long time ago, I became really good friends with failure, Vince. Like, I just realized in my life personally, but especially in my life as an entrepreneur, like if I get caught up and every time I stumble and fail, that's bad news. It's going to be a long journey, right? And a lot of us tend to have this sort of idea of like shame, that it's a bad thing to fail. For me, what I've come to know is like every failure has taught me something. Every failure has provided me with some level of guidance on how to do it better, faster, or down the road. So I tell people embrace failure, right? And for me, like I walk out the door every morning and it's like, okay, what's going to be the failure today, right? And there's always going to be one, right? I would say the biggest failure, I don't know. I just don't have that sort of relationship with failure that a lot of people do.
People look at failure in the wrong way. I'm going to agree with you on that, because if you don't quote unquote fail, whatever you want to call it, you can't improve. You don't know. You don't know what you did wrong. You don't know what you could do better. You have to, which leads to self-reflection. I think something I know you're big into as well.
Yeah.
Taking the time to look at what happened and how we can improve.
Always. I mean, that is the essence of psychology and what I teach, right? Like we need to be reflecting on what are the parts of me that I'm bringing to my day? What are the parts of me I'm bringing to my business, to my customers, right? Like unless I can sit down with myself and reflect on all of the good things, but all the bad things, like what are some of my weak spots? What are some of the places I can grow? Like I want to always be growing. I want to always make sure that I'm being my best possible self, not just for, the people in my life personally, but for my clients, my customers, and everyone else.
Always be learning. You heard that from him, because the learning never stops unless you want it to. Absolutely. I always have some book I'm reading. Sometimes in my workload, it takes longer to get through it. But something I've been trying to be harder on myself is incorporating 20 minutes of reading in the morning. Something I'm really working on. Yeah. But speaking of learning, if you could sit down and have a conversation with any entrepreneur throughout history, who are you choosing to sit down with?
Yeah, I love this question. I'd probably say Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is just one of the guys I've always idolized and looked up to. who has, throughout the years, through his books and some of his seminars, provided me with a lot of guidance. I just think he's done it really well. He started with nothing. He started with me. I am right. I am the service. I am the product. I am, and so I've always sort of idolized him in that way. This a lot of people don't see him as an entrepreneur. They might see him as a guru or as a coach. But if you look at the company this man has built,
the movement as well. He's on his own. There's different definitions of entrepreneurs. For the purpose of this show, I use the definition of founder of a company because we're the bootstrapping where there's no one else cutting a check. There's no one giving me money if I'm not the one that's facilitating it. Hopefully in the near future I have a middle party helping me out, facilitating some deals. But I want to now look into the future with you, Carlos. What's next for all of your entrepreneurial endeavors? What are we working on right now?
So we're looking to probably open a second office here next year. We're just noticing, because of COVID, but just, life, man. Life is challenging. And over the last couple of years, people are really starting to seek out mental health services, which is awesome. And we want to be able to be there and provide that service. But I'm starting to step out of the office and really taking some of these psychological principles, some of these ways in which I help people get unstuck and bring it to a bigger audience. So getting on some stages talking about, not just depression, anxiety, but how do we maneuver through growing our self-confidence, growing our self-esteem, being our best possible selves, right? How do we find time to incorporate all of those things that we want into our life, whether it's money, meditation, inner peace, whatever it is. So really starting to get out there and talk, on some platforms about some of these things.
Trying new things is a great way to improve your mental health because once you gain confidence in new areas, your life overall will improve as well. You agree with that?
Oh my God, so much.
Something, I'm a career learner. Anybody who knows me personally, I'm always up to something. Like right now, between the holiday book that may be coming out and some Spanish lessons, you name it, there's always something I'm doing. And that's what I admire about Carlos. He's always on to the next thing. Big things are coming. I think we now should dive into the Spotlight story. If it's your first time with us, at the end of each episode, I share the entrepreneurial journey of a fellow founder to get our guest take on it. And as we have a fellow Marine on the show today, a Marine turned entrepreneur, we're going to look into the story how FedEx started and Fred Smith.
Awesome.
He showed entrepreneurial tendencies real young as he learned to fly at 15, and then his hobby of crop dusting began part-time. At 16 years old, he and two friends formed Ardent Record Company, a business that still existed when this article was written in 2008. These young entrepreneurs had a profitable business and actually had a few hits that were titled Rock House and Big Satan Mama. While he was attending Yale in the mid-1960s, he wrote an economics term paper on the need for reliable overnight delivery in a computerized information age. His professor was less than impressed and responded, "The concept is interesting and well-formed, but in no order to earn better than a C. The idea must be feasible." A few years later, through a combination of innovative thinking, unbridled charisma, and sheer determination, he used this, quote, interesting but unfeasible concept to found the world's first overnight delivery company and change the transportation industry forever. I learned he was born with a congenital birth defect, a bone socket hip disorder called calparesis disease, which caused him to wear braces and walk with the aid of crutches for most of his youth. And I included this because the never give up attitude is right here, just like we both share.
That's awesome.
His mother worked real hard to build his self-esteem and encourage his participation in physical activities. He started doing basketball and football, and I put that in there as well because of our mental health. We know how important that is. After Yale was the Marines, where he credits he got a lot of lessons for his business success. Federal Express, or FedEx, started in 1971. With 14 Falcon jets servicing 25 cities. And it was slow, and for everybody else to never give up, they lost nearly $13.4 million in their first 2 years working. But they said the key ingredient to success came when their corporate philosophy emphasized treating its workers fairly. Managers are carefully trained to foster the respect of all employees for their performance to be monitored. I think that's amazing. Yeah. Fred Smith believes that fair treatment instills company loyalty, and then company loyalty will pay off. Carlos, what do you like best about Fred Smith's story?
Oh man, that's this thing about company loyalty and employees. I am a firm believer that if you are treating your people well and they feel inspired and want to come and work for you, that's going to translate into more customers, a bigger bottom line, because people are going to want to do business with your company because of the way that they feel when they're doing business with your company. And if your employees are happy, your people are happy, you better believe that your customers are going to be happy.
And that's something I talk about all the time, although I'm not in the corporate environment directly. One of my side gigs was a restaurant, and the way the management treats you, the way people treat you, that's where you want to be. They're helping you with your schedule. They're flexible. They understand things happen. If you look at past positions, my last corporate position was one that just left a bad taste in my mouth. People weren't treated fairly, and there was just a corporate environment. If anybody out there, if you've worked in a corporate building before, you know it's like a fake culture. You know, like the outside world doesn't exist. There are different groups of people who have decision-making abilities, and that's every corporate place. It just wasn't for me. It's cool for some, what works for some doesn't work for everyone. And for me, I realized I leveraged having more opportunity for giving back through my story.
Yeah, but I love what you said there about the culture, right? Like every organization does have within their walls their own little culture, right? And the CEO, the entrepreneur, the owner should be from day one making sure that they're doing everything possible to contribute to a positive culture, right? This week I just spoke, at an institute about emotional intelligence, right? Emotional intelligence and the advantages that you can have in business as a leader if you learn to harness some of these skills. And some of those skills are, right, like, are you showing up with compassion? Are you showing up with empathy? How do you treat your employees? Do they love coming to work for you? You know, do you take some time to validate them, to tell them how well they're doing? All of those things need to be there.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it's something more and more because people have spoken out about being they've been treated poorly, to say the least. And I've seen some situations where people thrive in corporate. They're built on that atmosphere. I've seen some people where they're not. I never really had a role model in any of my corporate experiences, a mentor, which some people, they find one, some they don't. I think if I did, maybe I would have stayed in corporate a lot longer because I would have had some guidance. But for me, it just never really sunk in. But I haven't looked back. I haven't looked back, so I've been on my entrepreneurial journey. I want to thank you so much, Carlos, for continuing that journey by joining me on That Entrepreneur Show. I love your whole journey because you spread your wings. You do from the Mastermind Series to your psychology. You're trying to transform something. You're trying to make something that never existed, and I'm excited to be witnessing it here. What is your last word for our Gasparilla Day special?
So my words are the motto to what we're doing here. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to fall. It's okay to fail. As long as you continue to grow from it, keep getting back up, and keep pursuing your success, whatever that may look like for you.
Where can everybody say hello, find you on social media, your website, everything you have going on?
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook or Instagram. I'm LifeDoc, life_doc, and that's DOC. And so you can find me there, follow me there. I post videos, some positive stuff. And we'll be closing out the year, so no real speaking events here in the next couple of months, but we're going to come out in January and February with some good events, some good live webinars. We just had one on the psychology of being a perfectionist, which people loved and adored, so we're going to be doing a lot more of that. But yeah, come and find me, LifeDoc, on Facebook and Instagram.
That link for the next Mastermind Series will be in the show description. Just scroll down. And of course, you know today's guest is a star in Mental Health Week, my latest book for elementary school children to learn the basics of mental health in a fun story. You can get that book primed to you on Amazon tomorrow. Be sure to check out the show too. We are at That Entrepreneur Show on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. But on Twitter, we are at Podcast by Lancey because of the character limit. And as always, we're going to end with a quote that inspired me, and it is from our Spotlight entrepreneur after talking about losing almost $14 million over the first 2 years, as I mentioned. Quote, I was very committed to the people that had signed on with me, and if we were going to go down, we were going to go down with a fight. It wasn't going to be because I checked out and didn't finish. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week on That Entrepreneur Show. Carlos, thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for having me, buddy.